It's the images. No one has to understand them. They don't have to be words in the bottom. It doesn't have to express anything. You're speaking the universal language, a language that the film itself teaches the audience as they watch it. All right, so you're wondering about where to go with your film, go anywhere, because the way you speak in the beginning of that film is going to teach the audience how to watch that film. You know, is there a movie if there's no one in the audience? Absolutely not. Okay, that movie exists. Pasolini said the protagonist of any novel is the reader himself. Okay, so you're talking about characters. The main character of my films is sitting in the audience watching it. But I'm one of the guys sitting in the audience watching it. I'm the audience of my own film, the same way you guys are. Kubrick said this: the first image of a film is the most important image you're going to give the audience. All right, we took this to heart. Now, without me knowing it, they put on front of the movie, inspired by this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now the next day, 100 journalists are saying, inspired, inspired, inspired. Like, I'm thinking, what the fuck did this word come from? Wow, everybody's like, inspired by. Then I realized, well, it's the first word in the movie. And like Kubrick said, the first image is going to be the most important image the audience gets. And it's true. Now I know it's absolutely true. I always believed it. Now I know it's true.
I definitely believe in women that are powerful, and I believe in capabilities of women. I believe that the potential of women is not yet explored to the full. I do believe that certain cultures, perhaps more than others, contribute to that fact. However, I also believe in the power of the individual, and I think that if this woman 100 years ago, and that environment I think was a lot less women-friendly, let's say, if more than 100 years ago she was able to reach this far in today's world, what can any woman do? If you put your mind to it, if you put your willpower, if you put positive energy, if you keep your open mind, I think everything is possible. And I'm a big supporter of that belief, and I'm a big supporter of women, because I do believe that in a way they need help sometimes. However, I always say it's all in your hands. It's all yours.
This film was, I agree that it gives you time to see things that are happening too fast for the naked eye to see. And it connects you with the people in the film, the people of New York, in this way that's very intimate in spite of the distance. Yeah. And one of the biggest things I learned shooting this film was how we bring so much to either a still photograph or a moving image. We bring so much of ourselves to it. And the example that I use, you create your own narratives in a way, and this is like a series of little narratives. I don't consider myself a narrative filmmaker, but inevitably you bring narrative to it because it's a collection of 1,000 little narratives, but you don't really know what's going on, but you feel that this person is depressed, or that person is talking to this person because of that. The moment that drove that home to me was when I was editing, and there was a guy walking along looking at the sidewalk like it was the end of his world. He was like totally depressed and didn't know what to do with his life, and he's just looking at the sidewalk like this. And when I sped it up to real, when I played it at real speed, he's just glancing to see if his shoelaces are tied or if he's going to step in something nasty on the street. But inevitably, you can't help but see it other.
Cuba is, the people in Cuba, the education is very strong, and culture is also a very high point there. Artists, musicians, creative people are pretty much valued in the highest level of society. And just regular people are very poetic, and they wanted to sort of join in every moment that they could in anything that we were doing. And every day we were surprised by just anyone coming up to us, young, old, saying the most beautiful things. about art. And they all knew about the biennial. It's something that is promoted pretty much for everyone to participate on some level. For us, it was interesting because on so many levels, we were able to communicate directly with people. And at some level, the government tried to stop you from doing that. They wanted to have us do specific people in an elderly home. And a lot of the interviews and photographs that we took much earlier than that they knew we were doing. So we were doing things outside of the line a little bit, but they loved it at the end.
Yes, especially in such, delicate place where politics is so present, the only way to get into certain subject is through people that have actually the respect of the years, and I've done it in China or in Spain or even in Los Angeles, where the wrinkles are really hard to find because everyone try to hide their wrinkles there. But in Cuba, what was interesting is, in a way, elderly people have more right to kind of cross the subjects, and they've also seen a time when there was not, where there was, different angles of politics, and that was pretty interesting. Even though we thought that they didn't, they would really keep the interviews on their life, on their personal story, on, different way of presenting it, but they would never get politics into it.
For me, the movement and the grace that the model Kristen had was way more interesting than I could achieve as the still. So when I was looking at the Polaroids, I'd lost the magic. So I started to film the Super 8, and then we got the footage back, and it blew me away. It was sort of like someone opening the door, and I could see a whole pathway ahead of me of movement, and somehow everything I'd done as in a still, somehow it was such a breath of fresh air for me. So we wrote a story based on the Super 8 footage, and that's the trailer you've seen. So that's a very long, roundabout way of explaining where dreams come from, maybe.
I always thought as an editor-in-chief or as a fashion director, whatever position I cover in my life, that my goal is to make other people's dreams come true. Somehow that's what I think magazines should do with their writers, with their photographers, with the people they collaborate.
And I think that's talking about dreams and escapism and fantasy. All of you in the audience, you only ever get to see everyone that's performing here on stage today and tomorrow. You only ever get to see the finished thing. And I think the reality, the determination anyone has to have to realize something is sometimes it really does all go wrong. Well, for a photographer, it is the weather.
I say that craftsmanship is the last bastion of hope for humanity. That it's craftsmanship is about things made by hand. If we lose the ability to make things by hand and use our hands, we've lost our humanity. And so this is just a discourse in that connectivity, that idea of connecting to someone in when people connect through different cultures. There's this hope that there's less war, that there's more communication between cultures, that there's the hope that we'll learn from each other. Peter Beard said yesterday that we never learn, and that's why I find I say that my inspiration is always love and history, and I'm fascinated how we can never ever learn century by century by century. We have the ability to learn, and we learn very slowly, but this idea that of humanity. Of being connected to the other person, that we're all really the same, that there is no difference between us, and so that's the hope of bringing people together through, instead of standing there on a soapbox going we're all the same, we're connected, bringing people through commerce, through capitalism. Everyone loves shopping, right? Everyone loves buying things. Everyone loves. So if you can put it under that guise, like the hidden agenda, if you can put it under that umbrella, that there is a hope. There's a hope for humanity, there's a hope for elephants, there's a hope for everything then.
We are living in an era where we're learning, we have lost empathy, we have lost we don't know how to appreciate things anymore. And going back to Dice Kayak's talk, actually, we don't appreciate craftsmanship. I mean, in a way, the more we see and the more we're exposed, like again in the same panel this came up, I think the less we appreciate. So sometimes we could be knowledgeable, but doesn't mean you know how to see and how to appreciate. There's a difference. So you can know about the world, but it doesn't mean that you respect it enough. So I do feel a lot of it comes through education. I think that fashion education for me is not enough. I don't think it's multifaceted enough. I think it's to be a good designer. I think you also have to look at other aspects of the world to understand where the body fits in, how the body fits into that. I always did something that fascinated me and excited me. And what you do is you start your work because you are interested in an idea and you're exploring it yourself. And you then share that with people in the world, and you don't know what people are going to say. And I am quite brave, actually. I've taken a lot of risks, and I still take risks. I think without taking risks, you don't grow. I think you just don't grow. And I think I can say to you that I realized that I'm brave after many years, because I looked at other people and how they don't take risks. And in that era, definitely I felt that I was actually very excited. I'm still excited. But in that time, I didn't know what I was going to face later. So I was actually always living with hope and quite optimistic. And I do remain optimistic. But in those days, you know, I virtually lived in the studio. And, you know, when my friends went out, I was always working. And this is the thing, you know, this is really hard work. And if you want this to really succeed, you have to be prepared to put the hours in. So I remember a lot of my contemporaries, they were going out partying. I was in my studio and cooking and eating, you know, and then continuing. And I had a routine. So I was actually super organized. And I still am quite organized. I guess, you know, my parents always felt the most important thing was hard work and education. And they really banged this onto our head in Cyprus, in my family, both mother's side and father's side. So we had to learn languages. We had to learn instruments. We had to, you know, do so many things to please them in a way. I think then I applied that ethic into my work.